What's up, everybody? I'm here with Ryan Harris, played at Notre Dame in the mid 2000s with some very other recognizable names such as Brady Quinn, Tom Zbikowski. We'll definitely talk about them later. Went on to play a decade plus in the NFL. Now he is the Notre Dame radio broadcast color analyst, calls games in the NFL as well. Does a bunch of other things. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to start with I believe you grew up in Minnesota, spent much of your early life there. What was your first kind of recollection or engagement with Notre Dame as somebody growing up?
Well, first of all, great to be with you, Drew. And my first my interaction with Notre Dame really came from other people. I had a couple teammates in high school who actually were recruited to Notre Dame, and it started for me when I would tell people the top five schools. God, feels like it was a whole world ago when I was talking about my top five schools to people. And my final five schools were Michigan, Miami, who had just won the national championship, USC, Stanford, and Notre Dame. And when I would tell people that list of schools, they would say, "Wow, Notre Dame." And I used to remember thinking, like, well, I mean, isn't Michigan a good school? Isn't USC a good school? No, I didn't know they weren't at the time. You know what I mean? I'm joking, but it was something where Notre Dame always was a cut above. And then of course at the time Coach Willingham was there, and the first black coach at Notre Dame football in its history. And he came to my house, met my grandparents, met my family, and at the end of the day, Notre Dame did a great job of showing me that I could compete both on the field against the best and off the field against the best. And I had an expectation by my coach to go to class, to actually go to school, and to use that opportunity. And I'll tell you what, golfing with Coach Willingham recently, a couple weeks ago, he's still telling me the same thing. Hey, continue to improve, continue to make the most of the opportunities. But the one thing I think that made me come to Notre Dame, in addition to that, the thing that pushed me over the edge was they were playing Michigan in my unofficial visit. They beat Michigan. I'm on the field. This is 2003. So I'm on the field in 2000, might have been 2002, whatever that first year of Willingham was. And some guy, to this day, I don't know who he is, tapped me on the shoulder, turned me around, and said, "I know who you are. I know why you're here. You come to Notre Dame. You're more than a number. You're a part of a family." And he walked away. And that, I think, explains the Notre Dame spirit more than anything. You know, we know and accept people from all over the world. And when you're here, when you go to Notre Dame, when even if you haven't gone to Notre Dame, but you have that feeling that you can't shake, it's irresistible to you. That's the part of you're joining that Notre Dame family, and it has changed my life in the most amazing and spectacular ways.
Awesome. And I know you've talked about this a lot, but before you even got to Notre Dame, you appeared on MTV show True Life. I believe it's called I Want a Perfect Body. And real quick, I grew up in South Bend, but I wasn't necessarily a big sports fan, but I watched a lot of MTV. And I remember actually that being a really significant thing for me to understand Notre Dame a little bit, that they, picked you and kind of talked about the gold helmets. I remember, unfortunately, you can't really find that episode anymore. So I'm kind of going back from my
Or
12-year-old memory.
fortunately, or
Yeah.
fortunately.
Well, for you, maybe not for my research, but
Yeah.
I remember that being significant, and they showed you working out and trying to gain weight without losing your speed and stuff like that. But I'm kind of curious on how significant that was from you, and just in terms of like you're an offensive lineman, I assume that probably provided you a little bit different notoriety. And what was just that experience like in general?
Well, one, now let's just be clear. It's stipulated I would have led the NIL, right? If NIL was available, I'd have had every Nokia flip phone and Sorel insulated boots that I could get. It was funny because it was a great learning experience for me. So when you're in high school and coaches want to come and schools want you to come to their school, they'll send a message through a coach or through somebody in the office saying, "Hey, Coach Andrew wants to get a hold of you with the Minnesota Terrapins, right?" But one day my coach said, "Hey, MTV called. They want you to call them back." And this is you talked about the age, Andrew. Like we watched MTV back then, so I'm like, "Oh, maybe they're doing a sports century, their top 100 sports. I don't know what they're doing." So I called this guy. It's just one of the shortest phone calls I ever had. He's like, "Hey, he says his name. the producer for this show called True Life. Have you ever heard of it? And like it was like a kaleidoscope in that moment for me. I'm sitting here on this, first of all, pick up with a cord phone for those of you who don't know what that is. And I'm looking around this office like, yeah. He goes, well, hey, we're doing a show on positive weight gain. I see that you got to gain a ton of weight to be to try and play football. You mind if we come follow you for a couple weeks? I was like, sure. He's like, all right, great. I'll call you back in a couple weeks. That was the phone call. And then like 2 weeks later, he calls back. He's like, hey, I'm going to show up tomorrow at your workout. Is that good? I'm like, great. And then he came back for another half of a workout another day, and that's it. So I was like, okay, maybe I don't know. Maybe they didn't like my film after all. And then they showed it the night before I went to Notre Dame for training camp. And I was like, man, that was, I guess, like they used my film. I guess great, cool. And then the next day, I'm traveling to come to training camp for Notre Dame. And for those of you who've been to the O'Hare Airport, there's like, you go down the escalator to go underneath the terminals, things like. So I'm going down from on the connection from Minnesota. This lady who I'd never met in my life is coming up on the other side, and from three escalators away, she goes, "You were on MTV last night." In the panic in my mind, Drew, I was like, "Oh my God, people saw it." And so I came to campus, and the seniors were looking for that MTV kid. And then I'll also say that when everyone else came to campus, other people were looking for that kid too, right? So I got to benefit from seeing how people change, when information can benefit them, and really seeing how, look, I didn't play football to get on MTV. That was not relevant to me. If you want to come follow me work out, that was fine. Like I didn't care. But I definitely wasn't looking to gain from it. And I think that's been the difference for me in a lot of areas in life. I don't care to be famous. I care to be great. And if I can help somebody or tell a story differently along the way, if I can help somebody while I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. So that's the way I approach it. I learned a lot, and some of my teammates showed themselves when, they wanted to be tough on me, but then when perhaps their friends were looking for the kid from MTV, they were happy to say, "Oh, this is my friend Ryan." So it taught me a lot. People notice you before you notice them, and you need to be on your P's and Q's.
Yeah, definitely. And something else I remember about that episode too is just that, I mean, maybe this is a long time ago, but at that time, MTV was taking kind of the documentary thing a little more seriously. Um, so I think it was interesting that they were trying to show that positive side of weight gain and kind of how to do it healthy. And I mean, nowadays, I feel like, covering recruiting, fans might obsess a little bit over like, can this kid put on weight and stuff like that. But that was the first time that I feel like you really saw that process for an offensive lineman of like, well, it's not just about eating a lot and stuff like that. Like there's a specific way you need to go about it. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm kind of curious back then. I mean, I obviously you didn't get paid for that, but was there any NCAA involvement? Like, was there any approval process? Like, I'm kind of curious if there had to go through any channels or if there are any follow-up conversations after that aired because of that.
No, the NCAA was absent my entire collegiate career. Don't even get me started on one of the most irresponsible and derelict organizations in sports, and that's the NCAA. And this is an objective statement, not subjective, right? This objectively, they've failed at every turn. So, no, they weren't there. I did get a call back when I was in the NFL, and they said, "Hey, we're thinking about doing it again," but it just wasn't the right time. I think I was a second year player at the time, and it was just, I was in the NFL. I could barely play football at that level. I didn't need to be bringing MTV around, and I didn't. And so we didn't get it back up. But hey, who knows what's in the future? That producer and I became friends. It's amazing what friendships and where they go over the course of 20 years. So always be kind to people. Never think you're better than someone, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed at the stories that you'll get to live out.
And before you even arrived on campus, you played in the 2003 U.S. Army All-American Bowl with a couple
Yeah.
of your future teammates, including Brady Quinn, Tom Zabikowski, Victor Abiamari. I probably butchered that.
Abby Amiri. Yeah, it's all right.
Abiamari.
Willingham couldn't get it right either. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But what was it like to kind of get that introduction to some of those teammates, and how did that also kind of set you up for once you actually arrived at Notre Dame?
Yeah, well, I loved getting to meet him. At that point, there's these stages I guess there's stages in achievement where that game, for example, I think about meeting John Carlson, tight end at Notre Dame, at the Alamo, and we'd still say like, "Hey, we met at the Alamo." Well, how crazy is that? But Brady Quinn did such a great job of making sure that everybody met each other. Victor Abiamiri was, he was one of the top recruits in the class, and Tom Zbikowski had all the power of Chicago behind him every time he talked and walked. It was just something. Travis Thomas was there, still one of the best running backs I ever played with. It was so incredible to go to a place and be connected to somebody without knowing them. That was kind of the first all-star game. I know kids do these all the time now, but they didn't really do that back in the day. You know that, Drew. It was like, man, there weren't, 7-on-7 tournaments and all that, but it was kind of the first time we got together. And I remember Reggie Bush and Lendell White were on my team, and Reggie Bush committed at halftime. So we really were the tip of the spear in many ways, not just because a lot of us went to Notre Dame, but because a lot of us in that game played in the NFL, and a lot of us won championships in the NFL from those teams.
And so you get to Notre Dame. Obviously, putting on weight in a healthy way must have paid off because you ended up being a 4-year starter, played on some really good teams. What was it like to kind of, I mean, like you said, you kind of came in, you had a bunch of notoriety, and then you kind of live up to expectations too relatively quickly. What was it like to kind of adapt to that? It seems like that was probably a period of time where your life was kind of changing pretty quickly, but it sounds like you were able to stick to, you're not about the notoriety at the same time.
Well, you're right. Things were changing quickly. And, for the first 6 days of training camp, I was getting my ass kicked by Kyle Buttonzak, one of my favorite teammates in the history of the planet. This dude was everything you didn't want to face. If you think of the stereotypical defensive end at Notre Dame, an all-American boy, born and bred and strong as an ox, tall, he kicked my tail for 6 straight days. Now, I'm a big reader, Drew, so I dug into one of my favorite books, The Book of Five Rings, and it talked about just striking your opponent with intent and moving them with that intention. And Kyle Buttonzak started every day for 6 days beating my tail in this one-on-one drill in O-line versus D-line. And I remember that second day, I was like, maybe he won't go. Maybe he won't jump in line this time. But sure enough, somebody goes, no, I got Harris. And he comes in there and he gets set up. He's a big senior. And then I got him for the first time. Wham! And everyone was like, oh my God. Like, that's how bad I was getting my ass kicked. At one point, I had to pull the grass out of my helmet, right? And so, but from that moment on, I just started playing and I just said, look, I'm going to work on my craft. I can't focus on all this other stuff. I'm focusing on what I'm doing here. And then I remember we had a game, so they traveled me on a couple of games, and so I got to kind of get to see that operation. And then they called me in. They said, "Do you want to start?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Right now?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "All right, well, we'll see." And it was the most amazing week. I called, some of the people that I look up to, and surprisingly, Drew, a lot of them were like, "Don't do it. Take a redshirt year. Get stronger in the weight room." It's like, well, what does the weight room do for me if I don't know how to play? So I came here to play. I'm good enough to play. I'm going to play. And we set the school rushing record that still stands today. So it's 262 yards rushing by I forget his name right, Julius Jones. Julius Jones rushed for 262 yards in my first start at Pittsburgh, and it was just from there. It was about it was about staying focused. The hardest thing about success is maintaining discipline. I didn't have a lot of friends those first 2 games that wanted to hang out, and then after I started, I got home and I had 43 voice messages. It's not my problem if somebody wants to hang out now. So for me, the work was always done in silence or with select teammates, so that when everybody else got to the party, it's too late for y'all. There's no room behind the rope at this party. And that's really how I've been able to move through a lot of different social situations. I don't owe my friends anything. My real friends want me to do what's best for me, right? I don't have to say goodbye every time. I can just leave. You know what I'm saying? So these were things that for me, the work was done before people realized it, and they didn't realize that there was such an amount of time one way or another between when they wanted to be a part of XYZ success and when I was doing the work and spending time with people I cared about and loved.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so you ended up playing for two different coaches at Notre Dame. as you mentioned, Tyrone Willingham, and then Charlie Weis came in. You guys had a lot of success your first 2 years. What was that kind of like to be a part of that? See, Brady Quinn's rise. See, like, I mean, as somebody who grew up here, like I remember just seeing how kind of the community in general kind of really rallied around those teams, and kind of seeing, I mean, especially the offensive side of the ball kind of lead the way for the first time in a little bit. What was that like to be a part of it, and what are some of your fondest like memories from those last few years in Notre Dame?
It was an honor to be a part of that experience. Behind the Super Bowl team I was on in the NFL, I didn't play on a team that was more willing to do anything it took to succeed. I mean, when Coach Weiss got there, someone I talk to this day, I'm so fortunate. I love both the coaches I play with, and both coaches I'm still in contact with. I mean, it says a ton about Coach Weiss and Coach Willingham. But man, it was. I mean, you got to remember, it wasn't just Charlie Weiss. This was Charlie Weiss off of 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots, with Tom Brady. Like there wasn't anyone else we wanted to learn from. There wasn't anyone else who had more knowledge on winning other than those players and Bill Belichick than Charlie Weis. And did he come with a different mindset? I mean, the first thing he said, he goes, hey, defense, we're going to have an offensive mindset. I want my defense to score. In offense, you better expect to put up 40 points every game. I'm going to make the game plan so that you can go and do it. And when it happens, don't look at me surprised. I mean, that's like, whoa. I mean, this is the first meeting. We're all like, wow, what plays are we running? So it started with Brady Quinn being a phenomenal leader and quarterback. And some of the memories I think about, we beat BYU after they had beaten us a year before. We went out and beat Michigan at Michigan in the big house in the early slot, and Coach Weiss was calling out certain players that he thought was going to go down, and they actually, because of, as we say in the sports business, some heart problems, things get tough, guys start getting some cramps, and sure enough, it would happen. So, I mean, there was just like all these things that Coach Weiss said was going to happen were happening in games. We were winning by 30 points. We beat UCLA on the last play of the game because, we had an incredible catch. So we played a ton of different ways. We were willing, and our coaching staff was awesome. Charlie Weis maybe wasn't, everybody's cup of tea, but who agrees on the same cup of tea anyways, right? He was the best coach at the best time for us. He made me a better professional, and everyone on that team is still close. I was just talking to some of those guys yesterday. So the bonds formed by those coaches through winning and through failure have stuck with us and will be with us forever.
And then after your career wraps up, go through the NFL draft process. You end up getting selected in the third round, I believe 70th overall by the Denver Broncos. I think your NFL career is interesting. I mean, I think it really is an example of perseverance, because I know, I mean, it doesn't look like you played much the first year, then started the entire second year. I think you only gave up one sack that whole first year as a starter. Then kind of the injuries kind of crept in. What was it like to kind of go through a period where you saw you could have success, you saw you could play well at that level, but then you're also dealing with some of these other things that are taking that away from you at certain times?
Well, look, let's be clear. The medical advice that I was given wasn't the best when I was in college. I played 3.5 weeks after my first back surgery, and it doesn't sound that shocking once you realize, like, yeah, you should take 6 months after your first back surgery to play. Look, my NFL career was something I didn't even think of, right? Like, I know a lot of people say I want to play in the NFL, and I'm sure some people do. I just wanted to be great at football. I had an opportunity as a lineman to be great. And when I got to the NFL, my first OTAs, the first week OTAs, I had to have back surgery. It was a brutal experience. I mean, they opened the season on the road at the Buffalo Bills. I'll never forget it. I'm watching it on TV, and they won in overtime. And I was like, yes, all by myself on the couch. Like, that's how much noise was made, And it was just like, and I had to sit there and really plan out and envision what it would look like to come back. And nobody believed me at any point in time, Drew. Nobody believed I was going to come back after having a back surgery. Nobody believed me that we were going to set the, we were going to be a top 5 offense and set the record that still stands for fewest sacks given up. Nobody believed me that my career was still going. So the average NFL career is 2 years and 2 games. I played 10 years. I had 13 surgeries. I won 1 Super Bowl. I've done things that people will never be able to do. And the perseverance is something that I'm glad you picked up on, because I did. I had to persevere, and everybody has to persevere. When I talk to Fortune 500 companies as a keynote speaker, when I'm talking to teams as a keynote speaker, you're going to need perseverance. And the way I did it was using the words I am, I can, I will. Drew, I don't know if you knew this, but whenever you focus on a process, you reduce your anxiety 79%.
Oh, wow.
So even before the Super Bowl, I am terrified. My greatest achievement is going to be my greatest failure. I am ready. I am prepared. I can put on my pads. I can knock the heck out of somebody. I will be a champion. Even before that practice day against Kyle Buttonsack, I am going to focus on this drill. I can strike my opponent with intention. I will win this one drill, and I'll be happy regardless of the outcome. So I had a formula to block out everybody's opinion. And one of my favorite quotes in the book, The Alchemist, is never tell people what you're going to do, because rarely will they believe you. And that's how I've lived my life throughout my career.
Oh, I love The Alchemist, so I'm glad you referenced that book. So so when you went to the Eagles after your first stint with the Broncos, was that your second back surgery you then had with at that point, or was that
No, that was back surgeries 3 and 4.
3 and
So here we
4?
go.
Okay.
Yeah, put your medical smock on. You ready? All right. So surgery, first back surgery there in South Bend, Indiana. 4 weeks later in Atlanta, Georgia, playing against the Georgia Tech against Georgia Tech in that opener. Get to the NFL. First week of spring practices. I mean, you're in your underwear is what they call it. I go down, they're like, "Ooh, yeah, you need surgery tomorrow." What? So I had to get a surgery where they take the bones off the nerve. My bones had collapsed on the nerves. Okay, so we took it off the nerve, right? Then I go. We have that season of the salary cap issue, the CBA, and I sign with the Eagles on the dream team. We are in our first preseason game. I'm the right tackle for left-handed quarterback Michael Vick. It's looking real good. It's looking like I'm going to make about, I don't know. This is also after losing a $3.5 million bonus and probably a $20 million contract from the Broncos after coming back from that back surgery and having a high ankle sprain on both ankles, right? So then we go to the Eagles, first preseason game. And second quarter field goal, bang, I need another back surgery, which ended up being back surgeries 3 and 4. I never left the hotel there at Philadelphia. The Marriott at the airport was my home. There was even an earthquake there.
Oh, wow.
Crazy things happening. I go back to Denver, right? And then I get released and I go to Houston for 2 years. We go one of those years we go to the playoffs. The next year we go 2-14, losing 14 in a row. Then to go to the Chiefs. That was the year, Drew, we didn't score. We didn't have a receiver catch a touchdown pass all season long. Well, it was also Travis Kelce's first year, right? By the way, Jason Kelce's first year was there when I was at the Eagles. When I got done starting 15 and 16 games for the Chiefs, they said, "Ryan, we love you. You have no football left." I chose they were wrong. The next year, I'm with the Denver Broncos and Gary Kubiak, who's from the Houston Texans, where we went 2-14. And we actually have a preseason game in Philadelphia. And guess what? We get to drive past that Marriott at the airport in Philly that I didn't get out of, right? So, and then I got to end my career with the Steelers after winning Super Bowl 50. And I was the last player to get the chance to repeat from that Super Bowl 50 team. So it was an incredible career. I had to battle ups and downs. I lost many friends. I gained some great ones, and I had to learn new things. I had to be willing to grow, to learn, to say, "Hey, that was my fault. Hey, I'm wrong there. Hey, oh, Andrew might have had that. No, coach, that was me. I told Andrew to do that, right?" So I got to grow, I got to play, I got to enjoy it, and I got to realize you have to enjoy every day. You absolutely must have to work hard. Otherwise, you'll get beat by somebody like me. And I'm going to have fun when I'm doing it afterwards or beforehand. I'm going to build camaraderie. It's worth it to be a great teammate. And throughout the injuries and the travels and the kids, I'm happy to say I like what I did.
It's awesome. As full disclosure, I grew up a Denver Broncos fan, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about that Super Bowl winning team. I remember, I mean, I know that was heavy defense led, effort, but you guys, did a lot that season on offense to kind of win some huge games, obviously. Can you kind of take me a little bit through that season and just what it was like, knowing you were kind of had persevered through so much, had so many people say like, this needs to, you're done, I guess, and then to kind of come back for that magical season and put it together. I guess maybe going through something similar as Peyton Manning had also been told maybe at times his career should end, and maybe he wasn't at the top of his game anymore, but to kind of have those stories and push through that to come out on top. What was that like?
It's the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, everything you believe about yourself comes true for other people. When I wear my Super Bowl ring, you can talk to me however you want about winning or losing. You know I know how to win. And what I'm grateful for most is the lessons about teamwork that I was able to experience. The best players in the NFL are only going to be so good if they're bad teammates. We had the best, we had multiple Hall of Famers on that team. One, they're always in the building at 7 a.m. Now, what they're doing at 7 a.m. in the building, not my concern. They're in the building, right? You got a lot of problems with that other places. Number two, you have to be willing to be imperfect to be successful. We were the most accountable and caring team. Everybody understood that it doesn't matter how good one person is, right? Everybody has to play together. Everybody has to be on the same page. And I think about when DeMarcus Ware came over to me after practice on a Wednesday. We're going against the Pittsburgh Steelers for the first time that season. He goes, "Hey, you're going against James Harrison, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." Because he's going to throw in that rip move, which is where they try and get underneath your armpit with their arm and kind of pin you forward. And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "When he throws in that rip, just pinch your elbow. It'll stop the rush." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about it." So James Harrison, one of the most intimidating players you'll ever see on the field. He literally puts Vaseline on his arm so his muscles are glistening. He comes in the first third down, he throws in that rip, and I pinch it. He goes, "Oh no!" And it's just like, that's the kind of team I was on. I was at practice working hard against the best. And by the way, the best on the other side of the ball was like, "Hey, think about this too. Let's go win." To be around Peyton Manning and to see how he had changed from, "Hey, this is how I do things, get on my level," to, "Guys, we have to do this. I think this is the best way to do it. What do you guys think?" 90% of the time we're doing what Peyton wants, but sometimes people say, "Hey, you know what? I think we should go this way." And it would end up making the difference in a game. I mean, do you work with people that willing, that flexible? Are you working with somebody on a team where they're the leaders bringing you in on the decision making? That was all the way. We were late one game because of a snowstorm in Chicago, and Gary Kubiak cut down all our meetings. And so the next day, and we won the game. And so we're at breakfast the next day. I see him in line back at the facility. I'm like, "Hey, Gary, did you notice we won a game when you cut 45 minutes out of the meetings?" He goes, "Oh, should we do that again?" I'm like, "Hey, if you want to mess up a winning tradition, go ahead." And I think we lost one more game after that, right? So you have to be on a group to win. It doesn't matter how successful you are. You have to make other people successful too. That's how you become a champion. Anybody can be good by themselves. You have to make others great too. And I got to learn that and experience that. And I bring that with me everywhere I go in everything I do.
So you mentioned you finished up your career the next year with the Steelers. What was it like to kind of make that decision to retire? And then how did you kind of decide, I want to pursue broadcasting and kind of getting into calling games with Notre Dame and some other places?
I was in training camp in the Steelers, and there is a thing that happens every training camp in the NFL. The offensive coaching staff gives the defensive coaching staff the plays that they're going to run the next day. It's called the script. And they say, "Don't look at this script." And the defense goes, "Yeah, we won't look at your script," right? And then they look at the script, they dial up the best blitzes, they dial up the blitzes to get certain guys confident or certain guys used to a different look. You get your tail kicked, and afterwards the offensive coach goes, "What are you doing? We can't play like that. We're not going to win a game." And I'm sitting there like, "You gave him the script. That's why. Yeah, we're not going to win a game if we give the defense our plays. You're right, coach," right? And I'm having this kind of thought for the first time in 10 years in the NFL. And I'm like, the defense now tonight is going to give the offense the plays, and the offense is going to have a great day. And sure enough, after we get into practice and we somehow had the best play calls against their blitzes, and we had a great day. Now that's how you respond, man. I just looked at it and I was like, man, this is really this. I'm seeing this from a different light. I love the game, but this passion is a little different for me. Like I'm not as willing to play that game. Yes, coach. Yes, we'll be better tomorrow. Come on, guys, we gotta be better. Oh, coach didn't give him the plays, and all of a sudden we're better. So it's just some of that manufactured chaos was something else, kind of something I noticed at first of like, I'm not even going to respond emotionally to this because it's not important. But I was so honored to be around Mike Tomlin and that Steelers organization. I mean, I was smelling my ass, Drew, coming in. I was like, man, I just won a Super Bowl. Great. The first thing they do, the Steelers walk you past 6 Lombardi trophies. 6.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame guys are all throughout there, right? And then when I went to my locker, all the past Notre Dame guys were on there, and it said, welcome to Pittsburgh, but it showed the different rings that Rocky Blyer and Jerome Bettis won. And it was a place that I needed to go, and it was a place that I was thankful for. And getting into broadcasting, I knew that I wanted to humanize and educate people about the game they love. I wanted to teach them about it. And I got my doctorate in applied football mechanics and theory. So I want to be able to use it and hopefully teach some of these coaches how to coach football games.
Nice. And so what was Notre Dame the first place you kind of called games for, or what was it like to kind of break into that side of things?
Well, I started on radio because I'm from Minnesota. I was like, man, I like that radio gig. K-Fan was one of the stations there in Minnesota that now is the Vikings, an official partner of the Vikings. So I started with some radio in Denver, and then I got selected. The NFL sent me a letter that said, hey, we selected you for the broadcast boot camp. I was like, okay. So I went there, and I learned from the best in ESPN and Howard Deneroff, Jerry Madelon, some of the big names at that time, and still today in sports broadcasting. And at this boot camp where they taught you how to do everything, they said, start at your alma mater. That's where you should start. You want to get into this, start with your alma mater. So I canceled my flight back to Denver, got a rental car, drove to Notre Dame, and said, hey, I'm looking for some media. Anybody got anything open? And sure enough, I got my first gig as a post-game analyst for home games. And then it turned into the Notre Dame football radio color analyst. And I love going home every year. I love being able to share Notre Dame with my family, with my friends. And it's been an amazing experience, even getting to the big game last year in Atlanta. It was marvelous. I'm more grateful to be a part of the Notre Dame family each and every day. It only grows.
And what's it like? I know you've also called some, I believe preseason Denver Broncos game too. But when have a connection to a team or an organization that you're passionate about, I mean, I see the gold helmet and the Broncos helmet behind you. How do you balance, maybe some passion or admiration you have for those places while also, being an objective analyst and applying all you know about the game, whether it's good or bad?
Well, first and foremost, it's about the audience, right? Like my affinities for whatever team or whatever. And by now, I've got so many guys who are in different teams, and like, I'm cheering for this guy on this team that no one would know us, like. Um, so I first always think about the audience. What does the audience want to know? Where are they coming from? What are they thinking? Right? Like, so against the University of Miami, what is CJ Carr going to be able to do? Can this offense even score? What's the on road? So I'm thinking that. And then number two is it's this when I'm as a color analyst, my job is to describe to you what happened in a play that you just saw and how it's going to affect the game or how it correlates to performance or what it should look like if it's done right. And so for me, it's really fun to just focus on the game. I'm not a former Bronco. I'm not a former Notre Dame Fighting Irishman. I'm the color analyst for this game, and this is the play that's happening, and this is the motion that's setting this up. So I just love being in the football space without having to get into those white lines and risk my body.
Definitely. And what's it been like? I mean, you covered, now under the second coach since you've been in that role, Marcus Freeman. What's it like to kind of get to know him and maybe see some of those behind the scene things, especially as somebody, I know you're there's the objective side, but you're also somebody who went to and played for the university.
Objectively, I wish people knew how great Marcus Freeman has been for this Notre Dame football team. And you cannot get that from the national championship game, and national championship run that they had last year. You don't get that from the social media videos. What Marcus Freeman has done for each and every player on his team has been remarkable. He's turned around a program that was designed for something else to be designed for the players and what's best for them. You could talk about the training table. You can talk about the recovery stuff that he does. You can talk about bringing in Lauren Landau, right, a former NFL trainer, to come and give for his strength and conditioning program. You can talk about the study centers and things. So, I mean, Marcus Freeman has done more than anyone realize, anyone outside of the building and outside of the program knows for his players and individually and then collectively. And for me, that's the most important thing. I wish people knew how much he's changed those lives, because he is changing lives. It's not just one player. That's a future father. That's a future community member. That's a future employee. That's a future coworker. And he's teaching them how to be a man. And he's doing it in the way that encourages production, has high expectations, and conveys a belief in the player's capability. You can't ask for anything more than that for somebody coaching 18 to 23-year-olds.
Definitely. And so, I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about football, but I also know that, I mean, I feel like you're a little bit of a renaissance man. You do a lot of different things. You've written a book before. I actually have the title right here. It's Mindset for Mastery, an NFL Champion's Guide to Reaching Your Greatness. It sounds like you're in law school currently in your second year at the
Yep.
University of Colorado in Boulder. You're also, involved in a lot of charities. I've also seen you speak out. I know organ donating is a
Yep.
big part of your thing. So how do you have this football side that I'm sure, I mean, you're a big guy. People think of you that way, but what's it like to also have these other sides of you that you're so passionate about and put so much effort into exploring?
Well, for me, the greatest champions in my mind were never champions for just themselves. And whether that's Serena Williams, Muhammad Ali, you can go through the list. Katie Ledecky, you know what I mean? Michael Phelps, like they all do something more. And I wanted to make sure that I could create a living for my family, right? Because 80% of NFL players are bankrupt 2 years after they're done playing. Most people don't see that. I wanted to make sure that I was doing something mentally for me that I had always wanted to do, and that's going to law school finally, right? Sorry, it's rare to have law school delayed by the NFL. I know it's tough. Don't send me any flowers. I'll make it. But this is a personal legend that I wanted to do, and my kids didn't get to see me play in the NFL. They don't know what that hard work and determination looks like. I will not allow my children to see me waiting for them and to go to and from school and just play golf in between. That's not going to work for me, and that's not what's best for our community. And then being able to shed light on some of the issues that we have. My father has had 2 kidney transplants. I know firsthand how somebody needing an organ or tissue donation can change lives. Now my father can come and hang out and stay a week at the house and be around his 3 grandkids. So we are all charged to be a force for good when you go to Notre Dame. And we really believe that at Notre Dame. And it's because of the people we see in front of us that have done it. I mean, I don't think it's just me. I mean, I think about somebody like Chris Zorich. You telling me Chris Zorich is just doing one thing or he's just going to benefit himself? No, I'm somebody who's directly benefited from him. Aaron Taylor, so I mean, I just think that when you look at who Notre Dame creates in terms of humans and communities, rarely are we doing one thing that's going to create the impact that we need in our community. And we're going to be doing what we can to make sure we're a force for good.
And why is law school something you mentioned, challenging yourself intellectually, but why is that something you want to pursue in addition to all the other things that are going on?
Well, it's something I always wanted to do since I was 16. At the bottom of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, there's a voting rights museum, and I'll never forget being 16. It said, "This person, ESQ, challenged this law, so Ruby Bridges was able to go to school." I was like, okay. And it's like, Bobby Kennedy, ESQ, used the Commerce Clause to desegregate bus stations and public areas. I remember turning to the teacher saying, "What's ESQ mean?" She said, "Oh, that's a lawyer." It's like, oh, I got to become a lawyer if I want to make change. Like the law is on either side of change. And unfortunately, throughout my life and through many people's lives, if I had had my law degree, it would have been, situations would have been different, whether it's being able to help people out or be able to communicate things to someone or, reading a contract fully and saying, and knowing that you have the leeway to say, that's not going to work for me. And learning that that's what you say, right? I mean, Drew, I was in a place, and I don't want to swear on your show, I don't know what they got, but like, you had a problem with somebody, you let them know, right? Now I can say things like, well, that doesn't fit your governing documents. Well, that's not the statement that you made yesterday. Would you like me to refresh your memory? Like, so, I mean, there's ways to communicate. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter how successful I was as an athlete, nobody cares in the real world. And so I'm a big believer that you have to get another credential if you're an athlete to be taken seriously in the world. And I love negotiating. I love helping people. I love creating solutions. I love defending people. And with the NFL's programs, it's totally free. So I got to do it.
You touched on Muhammad Ali earlier. I know your faith is a big part of your life too, and I kind of wanted to ask you about it because obviously you're a big Notre Dame guy, obviously a very prominent Catholic university, but you also have this other side of you that's maybe a little different. And I was wondering if you could talk about um, kind of the importance of that to you, and also maybe how accepting the Notre Dame community is, because I know a lot of football players in general aren't necessarily Catholic, but they go to mass, so they kind of understand those traditions as well.
Well, let's start with the fact that Notre Dame is our mother. Drew, what else you got that's ours? You and I's, man. Right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Your lips even started getting parched. You're like, I don't know. That's my soda over there, right? I mean, our mother. I really think people miss that about Notre Dame. It's our mother. Our mother does not care by what name we call her. Our mother knows that we're hers. Our mother does not want us to keep each other from the lunch tables, the dinner tables. Our mother does not want us to keep each other from learning from one another. And Notre Dame was the only school in my 5 school visits that took me to a mosque on my visit. How is that possible? So it's not just the invitation. I mean, they didn't have to say anything about Islam. When you bring me to a mosque, what it told me was, we listened to you. We understand what's important to you, and we want you to know that if you come to school here with us as a part of this Notre Dame family, you're going to be able to find a place to pray. I bet most people don't know Notre Dame has one of the oldest Muslim student associations in America. It's one of the longest running in America. And this is not new. You can read the books that we all believe. It does not teach us to hate each other. It does not teach us to put up walls. It does not teach us to cast each other aside because we're teammates, because we have a different experience. The inclusion that Notre Dame showed me from the first moment they welcomed me to campus is something that I give to everybody in my life. And that's the power of faith. You really believe in God's love, you believe in agape love. Well, can you love somebody different than you? That's the test. One of my favorite verses in the Quran is, do you think you would be left with I believe, right? And not be tested? You're going to be tested. But let me tell you this too. I was, as a Muslim, I would go to the mass before games. There were Christian. I had different Christian teammates who wouldn't sit in the mass, right? So to me, God's message can be heard by anybody. It can be heard in many ways, and we lose capabilities when we kick people out. And from what I learned at Notre Dame, from what I learned going to Rome, from what I've learned from other religious people in my life, I don't remember Jesus kicking people out of things a lot, right? I think there was one time in the temple, but outside of that, I don't think Jesus was putting up barriers for people to experience God's love. And we must also remove those barriers for people to experience God's love. And that could be a smile. That could be a how are you doing? That could be a I love you, even if you're struggling to love somebody. So Notre Dame made me a better Muslim, made me a better man, made me a better father to my children, made me a better husband to my wife. And our mother does that for everyone who joins the family.
And kind of related to all this, you've touched on, Aaron Taylor, Chris Orch, some other people who seem to impact you in terms of just like the wide variety of things they get involved with, especially, once they're done playing the game of football. How important is it to you to see? I mean, I feel like the 4 for 40 thing, or four for forever, is like a recruiting pitch for Notre Dame,
Mm-hmm.
but to also see that that's actually something that you embody and your teammates, former teammates, have embodied. And I'll kind of end with this because I know you have to get going soon. But how important is it to you to kind of, you mentioned it's important to your family, but also just current players, people who have recently finished, to kind of set that standard still?
Well, it's to have that expectation and that timeline, really, right? I mean, it's funny you mentioned it, Drew, the 4 for 40. I laugh every time I hear it because when you're getting recruited at 17, you have people saying, this isn't a decision for the next 2 years. This is a decision for the next 40 years. And I'm like, I remember looking at an assistant coach at a Big Ten school thinking, did you make the right choice at 17 for 40 years? You know what I mean? Like, those of you listening right now, like, did you make the right choice, 40 years ago? I don't know. So it's to me, it's so funny to hear it in recruiting, but Notre Dame, you live it. Notre Dame, you live it. And it's something where as former NFL player or former Notre Dame players, we have former Supreme Court justices in Minnesota. We have former, lawyers. We have current lawyers. We have current CEOs. And it's not just the Notre Dame football. This is Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame athletics. There's swimmers and basketball players, all kinds of things. So Notre Dame, I think, is really the only place that will put you on a path for the next 40 years. And at Notre Dame, you have to go to class. Guess what? If you want to be in the huddle with Peyton Manning and Ben Roethlisberger, you better go to class too. And we have class every day in the NFL. You better pick up that blitz. You better know what's different this week. You need to know how to learn, right? This is important to your success. And I really, after seeing everything I've seen, and look, you can be successful many places. You will be set up for success for 40 years in a way at Notre Dame that no other place will prepare you, both personally, both professionally, and as well as spiritually in a third way. And Notre Dame has many examples of many people around the world who are being a force for good. And it always starts, I tell people when you go to Notre Dame, when the door opens, it starts with a smile because there's a recognition of you're in that Notre Dame family, and this person, without even talking to me, knows that we share the same experience, the same love of not only our school, our fellow family member in the Notre Dame family, but also loving God and making sure that we're a force for good.
Well, I know this is a crazy time of year for you. You're obviously, we mentioned law school. You got games to call. Notre Dame plays Miami this weekend. So you got a lot going on. So I really appreciate your time today.
Hey, thank you, Drew. Great to chat with you. And I'll see you around campus.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening. And I'll see you again next time.